ancient Egyptian pharaohs. What did the pharaohs of ancient Egypt accomplish, and how did they do it? Introduction. In ancient Egypt, powerful leaders called pharaohs controlled the lands. The people of ancient Egypt honored these rulers both during their reign and during their believed afterlife. In 1922, archaeologists discovered the tomb of a pharaoh. Inside a small burial chamber, they found 3 coffins nested inside each other. The smallest coffin was made of solid gold and held the king's mummy. A mummy is a body that has been preserved after death to prevent it from decaying. On the mummy's head was a magnificent gold mask. Jewelry and good luck charms lay on the mummy and in the wrappings that protected it. Other rooms of the tombs were filled with statues, weapons, furniture, and even a chariot. These artifacts have much to teach us about this ancient civilization. For example, the objects left behind told archaeologists that this tomb belonged to the famous pharaoh, King Tutankhamun, whom historians often refer to by his nickname, King Tut. The treasures in King Tut's tomb provided a unique glimpse into ancient Egypt. Other pharaohs also left behind rare riches and artwork. Many of these pharaohs ordered great monuments to be built to celebrate their lives and accomplishments. In this lesson, you'll learn about significant periods in ancient Egyptian history. Then you'll meet 4 pharaohs who ruled during these periods. Learn what ancient Egyptians accomplished and explore some of the monuments they left behind. Section 1. Ancient Egypt and its rulers. Ancient Egypt had 3 periods of stability and unity under the rule of pharaohs. Historians call these periods the Old Kingdom, the Middle Kingdom, and the New Kingdom. The Old Kingdom lasted from about 2700 to 2200 BCE. During this time, early pharaohs set up a strong central government. They also had great pyramids built as tombs for themselves. Some historians call this the time of the Age of Pyramids. The Middle Kingdom, from about 2000 to 1800 BCE, is sometimes called the period of reunification because it followed years of chaos and disunity. During this era, Egyptians enjoyed many great achievements in literature, art, and architecture. The New Kingdom, about 1600 to 1100 BCE, is often called Egypt's Golden Age. During this time of peace and stability, ancient Egypt's power reached its height. Rulers like Thutmose III expanded the empire far up the Nile River into modern-day Sudan and into the Levant, which is the coastal region at the eastern end of the Mediterranean Sea. Religion played a central role in Egypt's social and political order. Pharaohs were believed to be gods. They owned all the land and were responsible for their people's well-being. They were kings, generals, and religious leaders all combined. During the Old Kingdom, only pharaohs were thought to enter an eternal afterlife, so their tombs were built to last. Many objects were buried with the pharaoh for use in the next world. The pharaohs directed the buildings of other monuments to glorify their power. Let's learn more about these structures and the pharaohs who ordered their creation. And here's the map that shows some of the sites of the great monuments during Egypt's 3 periods of stability. So the Mediterranean Sea to the north of Egypt and the Nile River. This is the Nile Delta right here. You can see all of this outlined in yellow is where the Old Kingdom was settled along the river. The Middle Kingdom is here in the middle with the red stripes, and the New Kingdom is all of this green area, which extends southward to Cush and upward through Canaan. And this is the Levant area they were talking about. Section 2, Pharaoh Khufu, the Pyramid Pharaoh. The Pharaoh Khufu ruled from about 2551 to 2528 BCE during the Old Kingdom period. Today, he is best known as the architect of a famous pyramid. Not much is known about Khufu. Some stories describe him as a cruel, harsh ruler. Others say he was powerful but kind. Historians do know that Khufu helped establish the pharaoh as a central authority. For example, he maintained strict control over Egypt's food supply. He oversaw the harvest and storage of extra grain. He also controlled a large network of government officials who enforced his laws. Khufu emphasized his supreme power by declaring himself a god. Khufu and other old kingdom pharaohs had magnificent pyramids built as tombs for themselves and their families. Khufu was responsible for the building of the Great Pyramid at Giza, one of the ancient wonders of the world. The Great Pyramid sat at the center of a huge complex of temples, statues, monuments, and smaller tombs. It was made of more than 2 million stone blocks perfectly fitted together. Inside, tunnels led up to several burial chambers. The king's chamber had 6 roofs to hold up the weight of the stone layers above it. Building the Great Pyramid was an amazing feat. No one knows exactly how the Egyptians constructed it, but it took about 20 years to complete. Khufu had strict control of the project, organizing and feeding thousands of workers. The finished pyramid was a stunning monument to Egyptian engineering. When Khufu became pharaoh, he began construction on this great pyramid. How it was built remains a mystery. And this is Pharaoh Khufu here. Section 3. Pharaoh Senusret I, patron of the arts. The Pharaoh Senusret ruled from about 1971 to 1926 BCE during the Middle Kingdom. He was a strong leader who ruled a stable, unified Egypt. Art, literature, and architecture flourished again during his reign. The arts thrived during Senusret's rule. The pharaoh controlled mines filled with gold, copper, and gems, such as purple amethyst. Artisans fashioned these materials into beautiful, highly detailed pieces of jewelry, such as bracelets and necklaces decorated with stones like turquoise. Some of the greatest works in Egyptian literature were written during Senusret's reign. The story of Senuhe tells of a young official named Senuhe who overhears a plot to kill a pharaoh. Fearing for his own life, Senuhe flees Egypt. He thrives in his new land but grows very homesick. When a new pharaoh calls him home, Senuhe returns joyfully to Egypt. Senusret's greatest accomplishments were in religious architecture. He had many temples, shrines, and religious monuments constructed and improved. Perhaps Senusret's finest architectural achievement was the White Chapel. A chapel is a small temple. It was made of alabaster, a hard white stone. Some historians think the chapel was originally covered in a thin gold layer. Beautiful artwork decorated the chapel's pillars. Carved scenes showed the pharaoh with various gods. Birds, animals, and Egyptian symbols were depicted. Senusret wanted his memory to live on through his monuments, but a few of his buildings survived the passage of time. A later pharaoh took the White Chapel apart and used the pieces in a monument of his own. Archaeologists discovered the pieces and reconstructed the White Chapel. And there's a picture of the White Chapel there. Right here, we see some of his artwork. It says Senusret helped fund the building of Karnak Temple, whose pillars still stand and show beautifully carved hieroglyphics. The statues seen here are guarding the ancient artifacts within. Pharaohs from all 3 kingdoms contributed to this temple's construction. You'll notice a couple of them are missing their heads, it looks like. Section 4. Pharaoh Hatshepsut, promoter of Egyptian trade. During the New Kingdom, the Pharaoh Hatshepsut ruled Egypt from about 1473 to 1458 BCE. Hatshepsut was one of Egypt's first female pharaohs. Under her rule, Egyptian art and architecture flourished. Hatshepsut was also known for encouraging trade. One of her greatest accomplishments was her rise to power, since few women had ever become Egyptian pharaohs. Sobekneferu, another woman who had become pharaoh, ruled a few hundred years before Hatshepsut. Initially, Hatshepsut shared power with her male relatives. However, she soon achieved sole leadership. Hatshepsut strengthened her position in several ways. She filled her government with loyal advisors. She demanded the same respect shown to male rulers. To reinforce her status, she sometimes dressed in men's clothing, even putting on the fake beard male pharaohs wore. Artists were often instructed to portray her as a man. She also spread stories that her father was a god. As pharaoh, Hatshepsut promoted trade with other countries. Her biggest trade expedition was with the African kingdom of Punt at the southern end of the Red Sea. More than 200 men in 5 ships brought gifts and traded goods to Punt. Hatshepsut left behind a large monument to her reign, a great temple at Dar el-Bahre. The main part of the temple was built into a cliff above the Nile River. At the entrance were 2 tall, thin monuments called obelisks. The entrance was also graced by 200 Sphinx statues. The Sphinx is a mythical creature with the body of a lion and the head of a man. Scenes from Hatshepsut's reign decorated the temple walls. Detailed carvings portrayed the great voyage to Punt, and illustrated the valuable items that the pharaoh's traders had brought back to Egypt. And there she is. It says Hatshepsut actively encouraged trade. During her reign, trade helped spread Egyptian influence all along the Nile and in nearby Middle Eastern lands like Western Asia. Section 5. Ramses II, Leader and Planner. The pharaoh Ramses II ruled from about 1290 to 1224 BCE during the New Kingdom. Called Ramses the Great, he is one of the most famous pharaohs. He reigned for more than 60 years, longer than any other pharaoh. He is best known for his military leadership and for overseeing the building of numerous monuments and cities. Ramses used his power to excess. He had over 100 wives and more than 100 children. Never shy about his importance, he had hundreds of statues of himself built throughout Egypt, some of which stood over 60 feet high. From a young age, Ramses was a fearless soldier, traveling alongside his father in various campaigns. Children often helped their parents with work. At the age of 10, Ramses became a captain in the Egyptian army, though he probably did not fight. Ramses tried to defend an Egyptian empire that extended north into Canaan. His most famous military campaigns were against the Hittite Empire in Anatolia, present-day Turkey. At the northern border, struggles with the Hittites were common. In his best-known battle, Ramses reached a standoff with the Hittites, even though he was greatly outnumbered. Ramses was also a peacemaker. He and the Hittites signed the world's first peace treaty, which lasted until the Hittite Empire collapsed around 1190 BCE. One of Ramses' greatest projects was the temple complex at Abu Simbel. The main temple was carved into the side of a cliff that was on the bank of the Nile River. Another temple at Abu Simbel honored the queen, Nefertari. 4 giant statues of a seated Ramses frame the entrance to the main temple. The figures were carved right out of the rock face of the cliff and are among the finest examples of the artistic skill of Egyptian sculptors. The inside of the temple was also remarkable. Visitors passed through 3 large rooms, called halls, to reach the temple's main room. This room's altar contained statues of Ramses and 3 Egyptian gods. The temple was assembled so that twice a year, the sun aligned with the entrance, allowing beams of sunlight to shine down the halls and illuminate the statues. Ramses demanded more temples and monuments built than any other pharaoh in history. When he died, he was buried in the tomb that he had ordered workers to construct solely for him. His mummy is one of the best preserved bodies ever found. This is a view from below This is the view from below of one of the 4 66-foot statues of Ramses II seated at the entrance of the main temple at Abu Simbel. And this painting displays Ramses II in